When migrating from legacy public folders to modern public folders, one of the things that gets discussed most often is the difficulty of the process. And what tends to get left out in certain conversations is the actual behavioral differences between the two. And some of these are fairly important to understand in order to make sure that you users get the best experience possible. Focusing on legacy public folder behavior in Exchange 2010, as you're probably aware, uh, in legacy public folders, there's a separate database for both mailboxes and another for public folders. And the public folder specific database is what's going to contain both your hierarchy and your public folder content. The hierarchy contains both the permissions and the general public folder structure, similar to a directory structure on your computer, whereas the content is, as expected, where users post email messages, posts, documents, and that sort of thing. In a legacy public folder environment, public folder databases can be created in multiple sites, which allows users to access this data locally. Internal public folder specific mechanisms then replicate writable copies of the hierarchy and content, uh, depending on the configuration, to various sites so that these users can access and change this content as they see fit, providing for a pretty robust user experience when it comes to public folders. However, in moving to modern public folders, some of this behavior has changed. Uh, Starting with the fact that there is no public folder specific database anymore. Instead, public folders are now created in what's called a public folder mailbox. And this mailbox is stored on a standard mailbox database. There's now a single writable hierarchy master. This writable hierarchy master is created on the first public folder mailbox created in the environment and is the only location where public folder hierarchy is changed. We can still create multiple multiple places to store public folder data. We can put a public folder mailbox in a remote site, and but unfortunately, the hierarchy, since it only occurs writably in one location, users making changes to that hierarchy will have to do these changes or perform these changes on the hierarchy master itself. These changes that are made then from the hierarchy master are replicated using similar public folder replication mechanisms to the remote site, but in a read-only configuration. This allows users to access existing hierarchy locally with similar performance ramifications. As long as they're not making any changes to that hierarchy, things should go well. However, one big change to note is that content itself is not replicated. If content specific to the US in this example is created, that is the only place that content is stored, is in the public folder mailbox in the mailbox database in the US. If users in Asia need to access that content, then they will have to connect directly to that public folder mailbox. This is a big difference from the way that replication occurs in a legacy public folder environment, and therefore it becomes more important to make sure that content specific to remote sites, if access to various sites is done across slow links, for example, it becomes important to place that content closer to the users accessing that data more readily. That's not to say that this data isn't replicated. This slide is simply to show that since the public folder mailboxes are now a part of a standard mailbox database, replication from a reliability and protection standpoint are achieved via database availability groups, but just because the DAG is replicating this copy locally does not mean that users are able to access this data. It's simply used to recover in a standard Exchange configuration. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you.